Hey everybody, it's Evan here with an episode of the Weekly Reboot, and we're doing a series called Body by Trauma, where we're talking about how our bodies respond, our physical responses to trauma. I hope you have enjoyed it, and today I'm excited because I get to actually have a special guest, a special conversation with Dr. Leah Kaylor, and we are going to be talking specifically about one topic. And this topic is something that I don't care if you're a veteran, if you're a first responder, or any kind of trauma survivor, I guarantee it has impacted this part of your life. We are talking about sleep. So don't doze off right now because there's going to be some powerful content in here that's going to help you be able to get a good night's sleep. We're talking about how your body responds to sleep, and nobody in the country has more expertise than her. So let's dive into it right now. For full transparency, we got an email from someone you're working with, and he shared with us the book that you're working on, which is called If Sleep Were a Drug, right?
Yes.
If sleep was a drug, were a drug. Was a drug?
If sleep were a drug.
Were a drug. That's what I thought. And right away when I thought about this, I said, man, I can't count the number of times that I'm texting back and forth with somebody and their number one thing that's really impacting their entire quality of life is that they can't fall asleep. So I just want to quickly share a bit of your background because I want people to know that you know what you're talking about. So I hear that you are the FBI's go-to resource for sleep health. Just
I am.
drop
I've
that
been
little
for
credential.
6 years. Yes.
Drop that little credential and leave it in the floor to pick up later if you're joining us. And then on top of that, your medical background, right? And your doctoral background. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So I to go back in time, I got my undergraduate degree in psychology from Ursinus College in the cutest little place called Collegeville, Pennsylvania. And then I went to John Jay College of Criminal Justice and I got my master's in forensic mental health counseling because I knew I wanted to do something in the forensic world. Then I got my PhD in clinical psychology from St. Louis University. And I'm also a prescribing psychologist. There's not a ton of us out there. So that means that I have my postdoctoral master's degree in clinical psychopharmacology from Fairleigh Dickinson. So my specialties are sleep, trauma, and prescribing.
Well, there you go. With that, if you're not intimidated, and just put yourself in my
Please
shoes.
don't be.
This is me interviewing her, right? And here's what I know about sleep. I like it. I'd like to get more, and that's where you come in. That's basically what I want. So when we talk about this issue of sleep, first off, why does trauma impact sleep so much? Let's just start with the highest level question. Why does it impact us?
Sure. So whenever it comes to sleep, I think that this is the one thing that everybody should be doing and that you have an opportunity to do every single night, or you should. And so I think that whenever it comes to sleep, in my opinion, it touches literally everything. Like I kind of want to go like put out a table. You know how sometimes people put something like really controversial on a sign and they say, change my mind. Like I want to go and have a table and just have a sign that says, sleep touches everything, change my mind.
Yeah, I love
And
that.
that's kind of what I was thinking with this book. And like, no matter what you talk about, whether it's pain, whether it's mental health, whether it doesn't matter, like sleep is so intricately tied and often kind of in this vicious cycle with whatever you've got going on. So if you have, say, for example, chronic pain is going to make your sleep probably pretty crappy. When you're sleeping crappy in the daytime, your pain perception is higher. Your inflammation is worse. Like there's a lot of different things going on. And it's the same thing with trauma. When you're experiencing trauma, it's hard to shake that. Whenever we are experiencing that and we're having a hard time winding down or we're feeling very hypervigilant, or I'll say the word aroused, that's not what I mean. When I say aroused, I mean
Yeah.
physiological arousal. So maybe your heart rate is really high. Maybe your palms are sweating, like you're just having a hard time turning off that fight or flight response. And so you're probably having a hard time falling asleep. You might have a hard time staying asleep. You might also be having nightmares. And so that poor sleep is going to be cutting into your body and your brain's ability to kind of emotionally detox at night. So the next day, maybe you're not your sharpest. Maybe you're
Right.
not emotionally at your peak performance. And as we continue to cycle and cycle and cycle, unless we are getting help on our sleep, getting help in the daytime for the trauma or the stress or the anxiety or depression, whatever you got going on, and ideally, and this is kind of why I'm so excited about having both of these specialties, is I help people in the daytime and in the nighttime hitting
Yeah.
this cycle from both ends, because it is so important that in my opinion, that's the way that we need to treat it, is in tandem of helping people work on their mental health and specifically trauma in the daytime. And then that's going to spill over into the nighttime and having better sleep. But also there's lots of different ways that we can improve our sleep too. So it's very, very much a vicious cycle. And I'm super verbose. We can talk about lots of different things. But one of the
This is
things I just
good.
want to throw out there, and this may be of interest to your audience or not, but nightmares. A
Yeah.
lot of people don't realize this, but we can treat nightmares. And when I say nightmares, the modality that I'm going to talk about is specifically for repeated nightmares, and that is
Yeah.
something that obviously
Yeah.
our veterans, our military, our first responders are very much struggling with. And if you like, we can do a deep dive into that therapy, or if you have specific questions, I'm happy to answer those too.
Dude, I'm ready. Let's just do a 6-part series on this right now. We're just gonna
Happy to.
we'll be on this video for the next 4 hours. But I know that what you were saying, I know that there were a lot of people in groups right now, in weekly reboot groups, gathering, listening, and they're all nodding their head. And there's people looking at each other, elbow, and be like, she's talking about you right now, or a person be like, yeah, that's my life. I just want to rewind a second because you talked about something that I think is so profound, which is the compounding nature
Yep.
of multiple nights in a row, and sort of the deteriorative thoughts that go along with that then compounds it. Well, what if I can't sleep tonight, which then increases anxiety about sleep, etc. And so people kind of start spiraling in these sleep cycles. And I can't count the number of times that I hear couples who are going through relationship issues or people who are going through addiction issues. And it all really stems to, when's the last time you got a good night's sleep? And so when we talk about this, I want to, before we go into sort of the medicalizing of sleep and the treatment of sleep and the prescriptions and all that kind of stuff, I actually want to talk about something that I've wondered a lot about. So
Okay.
I worry a lot about people's sleep hygiene. This is a term, kind of their
Yes.
sleep rhythms. And so I guess the highest level question, what does right look like? Like what's good sleep feel like? What does it last like? How long is it? Because I know some folks, they play video games until 10, then they're on their phones till midnight or 1 o'clock, and they lay down at 1:30 and they still can't sleep. And then finally around 3 o'clock, they take melatonin. And finally around 4 a.m., they fall asleep. They wake up at 6:30 for work. And it's like, well, I got my solid 2.5 last night. And that's a lot, especially some of the veterans and first responders I've worked with. So first, paint a picture for us, the ideal sleep patient. What's their life
Okay.
like?
Yes. Okay, so you said a lot of different things there, and I'm going to try and like hit on a lot of them. But one thing I want to say here, and I say this at like probably the first like page of my book, and it's you don't know what you don't know. And I
Right.
think that that's so important whenever it comes to sleep because no one actually teaches us how to sleep necessarily. And a lot of times we do things to get in our own way. And so that example person that you just gave, I'm like, oh, there's a piece I'd work on, there's a piece I'd work on. So we do a lot of things to get in our own way. But let me just start by answering your question about the normal average healthy sleeper. When we're talking about adults and we're talking about ages 18 to 64, the recommended amount of time sleeping every night should be 7 to 9 hours.
Got it.
And I love giving talks in person. I love asking people to raise their hands and tell me how many hours they get. And as you can imagine, the lower in number I go, the more hands are raised.
Yeah.
It is what it is. I'm totally used to it. But then I ask people, well, what does it mean to be sleep deprived? And then we have all these ideas of, being in combat and being up for days. Okay, yes, that does count as sleep deprivation. However, the actual definition is consistently getting less than 7 hours of sleep per night. And I imagine that a lot of people right now are kind of like that head blown emoji. Yeah, that's actually
Yeah.
what the research and the experts out there are telling us. So I imagine that a lot of us, whether we choose to identify with that term or not, actually fall into that category of being chronically sleep deprived. And
Yeah.
that's a huge problem because your brain, a lot of people think that whenever you go to bed and you turn off the light switch, that your brain and body kind of go offline, they go into this airplane mode, and that couldn't be further from the truth. Sleep is probably the most productive thing that you do all day long, even compared to all the waking things that you do.
Love
And
that.
so I'm just going to give like a little 10,000 foot view of what sleep is and what's happening. So our normal average healthy sleeper, hopefully they're giving themselves between 7 to 9 hours of sleep every night. And so what's going to be happening is that they should be starting to feel sleepy around whatever their bedtime is. So for this example person, we're going to say 9 p.m. because that's my bedtime. And the person should start to feel sleepy. I like to call this the wave of sleepiness, where your eyes are starting to get heavy, you're starting to get some of those head nods. Maybe if someone nudges you, you're like, I wasn't sleeping.
Right.
That is the wave of sleepiness stage. Then we drop down into what is called light sleep or stage 2 sleep. And here it's a little bit deeper. We can still be awoken by sounds in our environment, but this stage, we actually spend about 50% of our night in this stage, but it's broken up in different cycles. And I wish I had a graphic to show you. Maybe we'll be able to share it later or put it in your show notes. But we're going to drop down and we're going to spend some time in light sleep. And then, this is what's really important, we're going to drop down into deep sleep. Deep sleep is slow wave sleep. This is very, very healing for the body. Our muscles should relax. Our blood pressure should go down. Our blood vessels should be taking a rest.
Right.
If we're not doing things to get in our own way, all of our organs shouldn't be digesting, but they should also be taking a rest break to repair all the wear and tear that we've put them through all day long. So this is a time where the muscles are relaxing. There's going to be a lot of cellular repair, tissue repair, muscle repair. Very, very important to be able to perform at your peak performance the next day. So that's deep sleep. And this is like a very quick overview. But deep sleep, our biggest chunk happens as we're falling asleep. That's when we get our biggest chunk. Yeah. Then we're going to cycle up into REM sleep. REM stands for rapid eye movement. And how do we know that someone's in REM? Their eyes are darting back and forth underneath their eyelids. But REM is crazy cool because if we were to put a cap with electrodes on someone who is in REM sleep, but also a cap with electrodes on a different person who is awake and they're actively problem solving, their brain waves are going to look very, very similar, which just kind of, again, like mind blown emoji. That is
amazing.
Wild to think of. So again, your body is not going offline. It is not going into airplane mode. It is busy. And what it's busy doing is think about all the things that you take in to your brain, to your senses all day long. Some of that information is going to be very important to you. Some of that information doesn't matter at all. So our brain needs to sift through what's important. What do I need to keep? But not only what do I need to keep, where does this belong in my existing neural network of information that I have?
Yep.
Yes. So if I know how to drive a car, but I got like a really good piece of information about how I drive the car or a shortcut or some type of something, that needs to go in my car file. That doesn't need to go somewhere else or just like heaped onto a pile of memories. It needs to be integrated. But also here, REM, and we've probably had this happen to us before, is where you wake up and you have like solved a problem that you couldn't figure out in the daytime, or you have this new or novel idea or like this kind of aha moment. That's because your brain is very busy with creativity and problem solving and taking novel ideas and putting them together. But also it's very important for emotion regulation. And this is kind of where we were talking about trauma earlier, is that when we go through something upsetting or painful or traumatic, and we're able to get enough REM sleep, we should be able to keep that memory, but strip the emotional sting out of it, if you will. Now, that was one sleep cycle. That was about 90 minutes.
Wow.
We're going to do that again. And if we're giving ourselves enough time in bed, we're probably going to do about 5 cycles. The key here is that REM sleep that I just talked about, our biggest chunk of REM happens before your alarm clock goes off. So remember, our biggest chunk of deep happens as we're falling asleep. Biggest chunk of REM happens when we are about to have our alarm clock go off. So lots of really, really important functions happening. So I just want to make sure that I answered your question there about like the normal average healthy sleeper first before I go even deeper, because I'm verbose.
Yeah, and I love what you said. Yeah, no, that's super interesting. I love what you said talking about, sleep being productive. We've talked before here on the Weekly Reboot about rest and about taking a day of rest is productive. And I think a lot of times the mindset is I'm too busy to sleep. I have to get, but what's funny is your work productivity declines so fast. So I love the idea of sleep being productive and also the idea of sort of what right looks like. And it sounds like you had a little bit more you wanted to add on. So I'm just going to pass the mic right back to you.
Yeah. So whenever it comes to doing things right or wrong, here's what I'll say, right? And this happens to me all the time when I'm in a sleep lecture. a lot of times I will have partners who are in the
A
room.
sleep lecture, by the way, sounds like half of my college classes. I was in a lot of
Okay,
sleep lectures.
I want you to stay awake during my lecture. So
Yeah,
I
exactly,
mean, sometimes
exactly.
yes, I do put people to sleep. It is what it is. We have such an epidemic of sleep deprivation, so I'm totally used to it. But that's not what I want you to do. If you're listening to this podcast, I mean, if you fall asleep, please just rewind and listen again because this
Yeah,
is important
exactly.
information for you.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
um, okay, so so what I'm going to talk about. Yes, I have a lot of people who end up being like couples who are in the room when I do sleep lectures, and a lot of times one person has the hardest time with sleep. Like you name it, their sleep is so fraught and so frustrating, and they just can't seem to sleep right no matter what it is that they do. Then their partner, they do every single thing wrong in the book and they sleep like a little baby. And this totally happens all the time. And so for those of you who are that sleep unicorn, I salute you. Congratulations. Most of us are not like that. Most of us do need to follow some quote unquote rules in order
Yeah.
to get a better night's rest. And so
Rhythms. Yep.
it might sound strange, but good sleep starts in the morning. So let me back up even further. Good sleep starts with waking up at the same time every day, even on weekends, even on holidays. I know that that sounds highly annoying. We need to anchor our sleep. Ideally, we go to bed at the same time and we wake up at the same time. If you can only do one of those, waking up at the same time every morning is what's so important. Then the next thing that we need to do is we need to anchor our circadian rhythm. And
Yep.
the best thing that we can possibly do, free, easy, go outside. Within an hour of waking up, go outside, expose yourself to some natural sunlight just for a few minutes, looking towards the sun, no sunglasses, don't burn your retinas. And even if you do a little bit of movement or deep breathing, that's going to be wonderful. Then, I'm trying to think about the example that you gave me. Some things, okay, so a lot of people love caffeine. I'm not here to demonize caffeine, but you're probably doing it wrong in that the best bang for your buck, because I know most people roll out of bed and then their coffee pot is literally on their nightstand. Not the best way to do it because you already have naturally occurring stress hormones, but good stress hormones and like
Right, right,
cortisol and
right.
adrenaline that are peaking in the morning to help you get up, get ready for work, get there
Alert.
on
Right.
time, get the kids ready for school. So that's already peaking. But if you immediately dump coffee on top of that, you're kind of just revving an engine that's already in overdrive. So the best bang for your buck whenever it comes to caffeine is waiting 90 minutes after you wake up. And that's when those naturally occurring stress hormones are going to start dipping down. And that's when you can pour some coffee on it and kind of help yourself. But a lot of people don't realize about half-life. There's so much that we can go into. So I'm gonna do a little example. I have a thermos here. If you can, for those of you who are listening, this is probably
A
like 16
pink.
ounces.
It is a pink and white polka dot thermos that says, what's it say on it?
Sorry, I can't. I have plans with my dog,
Love it.
which
Got
is absolutely me. So this
it.
is
It
probably,
tracks.
we'll just say like
Okay.
16 ounces of coffee. Okay.
Yep.
So let's say that we wake up and we have this at 6 o'clock in the morning.
Yep.
So we're gonna drink this whole thing at 6 o'clock in the morning. Okay, so caffeine has a half-life of about, we're gonna say like 4 to 6 hours. We're gonna be generous here. So half-life means how much is
Power.
half of it?
Right.
Go ahead.
No, I was helping. Yeah, I was just filling in. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. So half-life, we're going to say this whole thing after 6 hours, we have half of it still rocking and rolling in the body. And
Right.
for those of you who can't see me, I'm showing of
Half
my
of it.
thermos, I still have, I drank all of this, but this is how much caffeine is still rocking and rolling in my body. Then after another 6 hours, the half-life goes down, so I still have caffeine working in my system and working against me. And everybody is going to be different, right? Like everybody is this unique special snowflake. There are going to be some people who are ultra rapid metabolizers. There are going to be some people who are very poor metabolizers. So some people will be more sensitive to caffeine than others. That's the reason why we say before bed, ideally in the early afternoon, you should be cutting out caffeine. And that's why, because of how long of a
Right.
half-life caffeine has.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
And I do think that when we talk about sleep hygiene, I mean, any reboot group in the country right now has a blend of Celsius and Monsters and Red Bulls, and um, it's interesting. Here's a little trivia about me for all of those who join us on a regular show. I've never had an energy drink, and I've never drank an entire cup of coffee. And this is a
Good for
very
you.
people are shocked by this about me, and I'm not bragging. I'm saying one, I'm already crazy hyper. I don't think I need additional adrenaline. I think those who watch the Weekly Reboot and know me personally would be. I don't need any stimulants. Let's just say that. But my question is, there are a lot of people that jokes. I run on coffee or I run on
Hmm.
Red Bull or whatever, and I think the idea of half life, this idea that so a person says, yeah, that's all well and good, but guess what? I still have to function at a high level. I have to go to my job. I have a physical job, or I have shift work and my sleep is all over the place and yada, yada. And almost all of them have been to sleep studies. A huge number of reboot participants, they've already been to a sleep study. They've been to a study, they've been given some techniques, they've been given maybe some medication, maybe told what to do, and yet they persist this challenge. And I have been, over the years, I've always been amazed because I'll be on road trips with people and they'll drink Mountain Dew or Red Bull at like 6 o'clock at night. And I'm like,
Hmm.
but in their mind, they're thinking, well, I have to make it 4 more hours. And in my mind, I'm thinking, just go to bed now if you're that tired, right? And so I'm curious if we're talking about expert health, I shouldn't eat Twinkies and Ho-Hos all the time because it's bad for me. Any fitness instructor is going to tell me that. Should I just never do energy drinks? Like, is this the one area of health where Evan Owens has actually done well, where I'm better than the pack, which every other area I'm terrible in? Is this that, or is it one of those things where you can do it, but it has to be happening in the morning, like specifically, not even coffee, but specifically these sort of 5 hour energy kind of shots of adrenaline, shots of caffeine?
So what I want to circle back to is cycles. And I think that there's a lot of vicious cycles. So if you're not sleeping well, it's probably why you're fueling yourself with caffeine and then doing it poorly timed, and then you can't fall asleep, and then you're relying more on caffeine. So it's just this struggle
Yeah,
of, again, if you're having, why do you need so much caffeine is the question. And I'm not trying to demonize it. You
that's
can
a good
certainly have
question.
it and
That's
have
a
it in
good question.
moderation.
Yeah, no, I love the question. I love what you said about anchoring our sleep, giving
Hmm.
ourselves waking up at the same time. If we're going to drink caffeine, do it at consistent times. Be consistent with it. It's like any, and I
Yes.
think that that's something that anyone who's come from a background of discipline, right? First responders, military people, they understand, and I think we understand that discipline is everything when it comes to habits and health. But sometimes with sleep, it's the hardest one. And I like the idea that if I do it once, then the next day I do it again. Now, I've heard before that some people claim you can bank sleep. So I'm just going to run myself ragged for 5 days, but on Saturday mornings I'm going to sleep till noon. Does sleep work that way? Like,
No.
can you just bank it? So that's a myth.
I'm shutting that down. No. So there's a lot of studies out there that people will, just like you said, run themselves ragged for, say, just the work week. We'll just say that.
Right, 5 days.
And
Yep.
let's say that again, the average adult needs 7 to 9 hours, but let's just say that they're consistently getting less than that. So the researchers will normally add up, okay, how much of a sleep debt is that? If you should be getting between 7 and 9, but you're actually getting, say, for example, 5, they'll add up how much sleep debt that is, and then they'll normally let the participants sleep in as long as they want on Saturday, as long as they want on Sunday, and that sleep debt adds up super quick, like way quicker than you think. So let's just try and like really simplify it. Let's say that this, well, or take me for example. Let's just say that I function amazing on 7 hours, but Monday through Friday, I can only get 6. So we're going to just make it super simple. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, I rack up a sleep debt of 5 hours.
Yep.
And on the weekend, so Saturday and Sunday, I try and sleep in more, but maybe I only get like an extra hour or 2 hours, maybe. Like my body wants to, and it'll give me a little bit more. So we'll say on each of those days that I was able to do 1 extra hour of sleep. So I've quote unquote repaid 2 of that 5 hours worth of sleep debt. Now, that's a very basic example. That's also a very generous example.
Yeah,
Most
exactly.
people in these studies are racking up sleep debt of more like 12 hours during a weekday. And then when they're trying to repay it, they're not getting a fraction of it back.
Yeah.
So the bottom line is sleep is not like a bank. It does not work that way. You cannot catch up on sleep. Yes, you will feel a little bit better if you sleep in a little bit on the weekend.
Sure.
However, you will never, ever make up for the total amount of sleep lost time, total amount of REM, total amount of deep. You simply will not be able to do that. So the answer to that question is no. Now, if you do know that you are going to be in a situation where you are going to be short on sleep, say for example, maybe you're taking like a red eye and you know that this is just going to be really tough because sleeping on planes is hard for you, you can try and get a little bit of sleep, maybe take a nap before you get on the plane, and you can try and pad it a little bit that way. But no, there's no such thing as like repaying that sleep debt. And that's what's so dangerous, is that sleep debt adds up quick.
Yeah. Well, and
It's
it's
like
got
a ruthless
compounding,
loan
and
shark.
well, and it's probably compounding too, right? That's the other thing, is the impacts compound. So, okay.
Yes.
So I know some folks now are hearing this and they're starting to feel a little bit, we've talked a lot about behaviors that we can have control over, right? We've talked about your caffeine intake, anchoring your sleep. We've talked about what the standard should be, how we do that, how good sleep starts in the morning with my morning routine and actually ends in the evening, how when I'm sleepy, when I feel tired, that's when I should go to bed, as opposed to being like, well, my bedtime's not for 2 more hours, I'll just push through, right? And sort of monitoring those things. So we've talked about things that we do have control over, which I think is important, because sleep can feel like this nebulous thing that's totally outside of our control. And I think that what I hear you saying is, to some degree, sleep as an outcome is, but as sort of what I'm inputting to sleep can have profound implications on the outcomes and outputs of how I see sleep. So I love that. So, but there's also a lot of people who, you brought up nightmares earlier, you brought up, they have shift work schedules. So the idea of a predictable sleep night is almost unheard of. They have been on long deployments, or they have been in situations where they were in unsafe homes where they had to sleep with one eye open, worried what might happen. They lived with addicts who they had to watch. They were caregivers. They had to worry, is my person next to me, they're not in bed, are they somewhere hurting themselves? Do I need to go check on them? I mean, these are all real kind of spinning thoughts that happen for a lot of people. And there are things that happen to us that definitely have profound impacts on our sleep. And so I guess my question would be this, which is, first off, when those things happen, I heard you say that there are things we can do to in terms of habit, but I'm wondering, you also mentioned there's some other things that can be helpful in terms of sort of improving those. Would you talk about those a little bit, knowing that some of our folks listening, they've been through all the things you're going to share, and some of them haven't either. So I'm thinking of some of the interventions, some of the methodologies, some of those sorts of things, modalities, et cetera.
So one of the first thing that's coming to mind, and I'm not sure if you're alluding to this or not, I'm certified in both EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, and brain spotting. And so as you're describing this group of people, I'm like, oh yeah, this is the perfect group for these interventions. And that's what I would be doing in the daytime. And then also equipping them with exercises for the evening, because again, as the sun sets, for some people that's a relaxing time. For other people, it is not. It can almost jack up our physiological arousal, because maybe nighttime doesn't feel safe. Maybe it feels, like you said, I don't know where my partner is, or I need to sleep with one eye open. And so sleep, whenever we think about the conditions necessary for sleep, we need to be calm. We need to relax the body. And so what I would be doing during the daytime would be helping people with various different trauma techniques, like the EMDR and the brain spotting that I mentioned. But at night, I would be making sure that they know how to do various different things, like deep breathing exercises, like guided imagery, progressive muscle relaxation, maybe stretching or yoga nidra, different things like that, because we have to actively work to get the body to relax. And it doesn't matter who you are. You know, there's, in the day and age that we live in right now, there's so many different things vying at our time and our attention and our priorities, that a lot of people want to go and just then fall face first into bed and immediately fall asleep. And I don't care who you are, it just doesn't work like that. So we need skills to be able to go from that busyness of the shift, the craziness, the trauma, all of it, to do our best to get to a place where the body is relaxed, so we are setting up a smooth transition as much as possible for sleep.
No, it's amazing. It's funny. So my wife worked with the Department of Defense for many years, and there are a collection of recordings of my wife doing guided relaxation voiceovers.
Nice.
Because she did a lot of voiceover work back in the day, and it's funny because some people who know her from that era of her life will still quote parts of that guided relaxation to her in this very
That's
calm,
awesome.
very guided voice, and but it's actually amazing because those things really do help. And even with our children, I have found so many times that my sleep habits, I really teach my children through my habits how to adopt habits.
Yes.
And I think about how many times I say, hey, I'm gonna take the iPad or I'm gonna take the phone out of your room so it's not a thing that's lighting up while you're sleeping. It's not
Hmm.
those sorts of things. They don't like that because all their friends just keep next to their bed,
Yeah,
but
of
my
course.
kids, it's out of their room. And that's a major sort of argument that's happened in my home, but that's the kind of thing that I think really can help. And so I love the idea of the EMDR, brain spotting. Perhaps some of our listeners, some of the people joining us for these weekly reboots have done those. I want to talk about a type of medication that I know a lot of people also rely on. So it's not caffeine to get awake, but it's actually alcohol to go
Ah,
to
yes,
sleep.
the world's number one sleep aid, which
Right,
is
right.
literally the worst. Um,
Yeah. Tell me
yes.
about that. What is because that seems to be the not even close to I mean, it's far and away the world's number one sleep aid. So
Yep.
talk to me about the impacts that alcohol has on my sleep.
Yeah. So in the book, the chapter is called There's a Difference Between Sleeping and Passing Out, because when I say that in lectures, people just bust out into laughter. But honestly, it's true. Alcohol does not facilitate sleep, it facilitates sedation. When and
That's a
people will
great
say, "Oh,
quote.
alcohol makes me
That's a
feel
great
sleepy."
quote.
Yes, thank you. It will. It will make you feel sleepy because it is a depressant. That's what it does. It depresses brain activity. It slows down communication between the neurons. And that's what people are looking for. That's what they want. And instead, we need to teach them about stretching and yoga and deep breathing and meditation, because that is really what it is that you need. But maybe you don't have the time or the patience or willing to put in the effort for that. But alcohol is easy, it's cheap, you don't need a doctor's note, you can just go grab it. And, culturally, that's very acceptable, especially within our first responder military population.
Yep.
So, alcohol will make you feel sleepy. However, it's going to totally wreck your sleep. I can't think of something that's worse for your sleep. So we talked about REM and how important REM is. Alcohol is the most potent REM suppressor.
REM blocker. Yep.
Alcohol is also going to make your sleep very, very fragmented, meaning that you are more likely to wake up throughout the night. You may or may not remember that, and that
Right.
we call that
Exactly.
micro arousals
Yep.
of you're like kind of pulled into this very light sleep, or you may wake up fully, but you are not getting that deep, beautiful, restorative sleep that you need. You're going to be more in tune with your environment, as far as like maybe a creaky floorboard that you would normally just sleep through. You are going to hear that, and that is going to, again, be another micro arousal. So our body is just not getting that deep, restorative sleep that it needs. It's not cycling through those stages. Alcohol is almost like a mild form of anesthesia, if you will.
Mm.
It is not, even though we call it a sleep aid, it is not facilitating sleep. You are not moving through the sleep architecture, like we talked about, light, deep REM, as you should. And, you know, people then, I think this is, again, talking about the cycle, is you need it to help you fall asleep. You sleep like shit. You wake up, you need to pour coffee on it and just guzzle caffeine all day long. But then you're still wired because you're drinking caffeine too late in the day. So then we need to switch things and we need to put alcohol on it. So it's again this vicious cycle that if we have skills and we have tools and we have patience to put these things into practice, we can get away from alcohol. But sometimes people don't want to make behavioral change, or behavioral change takes time, and everybody wants this quick fix in the society that we live in here today.
Yeah, and I think it's so interesting because people look at Hollywood, or more importantly like rock stars. I live in Nashville, of course. I mean, music industry, and they're sort of the age-old musician story of they drink all night, then they pass out, then they have to get up and do some type of cocaine or something to be able to push through the day, and then they get really high up for the show and they do it again. And all those sort of legendary comedic stories that people tell that often end in tragedy are extremely true. The things that they don't talk about is the bad decisions that is a result, not just of the drinking and not just of the drug abuse, but actually of the lack of sleep as well. Kind of the cognitive decline that we experience in people's lack of wisdom, right? That the lack of being able to process. But yet I sit across from so many people and they say, Evan, like, I have tried it all. I've done EMDR, prolonged exposure, guided. I've done this. I've done, CBT. I've done all these different things. And sleep still eludes me. Sleep still eludes me. What do you say to a person like that? Is it basically like, well, get used to your new normal? This is just how it is due to the way your brain works now? Like, what hope do they have? Because I know that's where some people right now, they're saying like, I'm not drinking before bed. I'm trying to sleep. I just lay there. And look at the ceiling. And my thought, what do you say to those people? What kind of hope?
I say good sleep doesn't happen overnight. No pun intended. That's what I tell people. So way back when, how I got started with sleep was I was at the Memphis VA Medical Center and I was working with veterans, a lot of Vietnam veterans who had experienced unbelievable trauma, and helping them sleep. And so I have one individual in particular who, by the time he got to me, was sleeping about 1 hour a night. Not sure how he was continuing to live and to function, because that is unheard of. And we worked together for months. And I pulled out all the tricks in my toolkit. And for those who are listening, a lot of those tricks in the toolkit are cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, which is a very special modality. I also mentioned imagery rehearsal therapy for those who are struggling with nightmares. So those are a lot of tricks that I would pull out of my bag. By the time we finished working together, and this was several months worth of work together, he was able to sleep through the night. Now, I think that that's so important because we have just unrealistic expectations in the world that we live in today. Like, we might order something and it gets delivered tomorrow. Like, we like that immediacy. We like that immediate gratification. And with sleep, one thing that I also tell people is if you've been sleeping poorly and that's been your normal for weeks, months, years, decades, think about how much time we need to rewire the brain and change those habits. You cannot expect to have had poor sleep for that long and to come see me for one session and to be cured. It doesn't work like that. So I like to be brutally honest with people.
Yeah, it's going to take a while. I love the idea of it didn't take, a day to develop those habits. It won't take a day to break those habits of your mind and training those. So the book, it's coming out what day? If sleep were a drug,
October the 1st.
Okay, so Dr. Leah, she told me to call her Dr. Leah. I'm going to call her Dr. Leah Kaylor by her full name, Kaylor. You can go. You're going to be able to get it on Amazon, I'm sure, and every other place the books are sold. It's If Sleep Were a Drug. And there are so many other rabbit trails that I wish we had time. I wish we had time to go down talking about more even specific trauma responses as it pertains to sleep, including nightmares, obviously. And perhaps we can maybe you'll join us again. Maybe we'll be able to do this again sometime. And but for all of you out there who do struggle with sleep and who are fighting to sleep, we just want to encourage you that there are some pathways. And if you're curious about those, and maybe you've already met with some sleep doctors and it hasn't worked or whatever, hopefully you'll pick up this book and you can kind of listen to it and it can become a soundtrack for a better future for yourself, which is what we're all about here at Reboot, is embracing that brighter future. So we are out of time, but thank you for joining us for this incredible special episode of the Weekly Reboot. And now go to bed, get some sleep. Thank you, Dr. Leah, so much for joining us.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
All right. See y'all soon.